What's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 28 of Dispersing the Cloud. A couple days late, as always, it seems like. So I'm just going to recap the last week. Had 2 or 3 production assistant gigs. I started working with a company called Amory Guy. That's her name. She does art department stuff for commercials out in San Francisco. So kind of some of the same network as I've been doing, but instead of doing production assistance, I'm doing art department stuff. So it's kind of fun, mixes it up a little bit for me. It's a little more involved than production assistance, so I enjoy that aspect of it. I had an audition, and Saturday during one of the production gigs, I had all my stuff stolen. So literally my backpack, all my hard drives, my business records, basically I was erased, which kind of sucks. So I'll tell you guys a little bit more about that, and it kind of lines up with one of the books I'm reading, or that I just finished reading, so perfect timing, I guess. Process this last week has really been twofold. So the week before, we talked about really minding my own business, quote unquote, really digging into my business and making sure that I have adequate funds and adequate jobs coming up, and money's coming in months out in advance, so I can actually have the freedom to relax a little bit. It was nice because that week I was just crushing it, and then at the very end of the week I kind of ran into this problem where all my stuff gets stolen, and I have to spend a bunch of money that I actually had because I was on my game. I was minding my own business, and so I had plenty of money to replace the things that I got stolen. This kind of opened up some eyes for me as far as like holes in my game of I need a backup hard drive at a physical location that's not on me. That way, if this happens again, because of the nature of what I do, I bounce around all the time, this might not be the only time that this happens to me. So I need to have a backup hard drive with all my files on it that I update every month. I need to have both physical and electronic invoices that are made. All my invoices were lost for the year because everything was just stored on my hard drive on my computer. So I went back and I got to pull up some from my Gmail account, and I recovered maybe half of my invoices for this last year. Yeah, and then keeping my receipts off location as well. I had all of my year's receipts in my backpack as well, in a little money folder that they took. Luckily, I don't carry cash on me that often, so they didn't take any of the cash from the tour. They didn't take any cash that I have in savings or whatnot. But the worst part about it, I had a checkbook for each business in the backpack, so I had to change 3 accounts over the week, and it's been a little bit of a process, but I'll talk about that when I talk about the obstacles away. I'll kind of touch on it a little bit more. First, I want to jump into the book of the week, which was Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. If you guys have not read this book, you definitely should. This is right up there with Rich Dad Poor Dad, as well as Richest Man in Babylon. It gives you a good overview of how economics works, period. And it tends to lean political only because economics is a political issue. But the book does a very good job of explaining it in a non-political way. However, if you happen to be left-leaning, some of it will offend you because it points out that this is high school math, and regardless of what you believe, you should be able to do high school math and not waste money. If you live in America, you know we waste money constantly, and both left and right do it. I'm just saying on a very we'll cover some of it right now. So the first things first, in 1964, that's really what changed everything. Like, we didn't have taxes in this country before. That's the wrong date. I don't know why it's 64. I think it's 34, 1934. Sometimes I take notes on my iPhone. and I think sometimes I misspeak or misquote, but it's definitely not 64. I believe it's either 34 or 36. You guys can look up the date. But we didn't always have taxes. I believe it was World War I where we finally implemented a tax, and it stuck. And so the book makes this argument that it takes about 50 years for an entity or a government to implement taxes on its people. In the European countries, it took about 50 years. For the U.S. and our founding, it took about 50 years before we got okay with the idea of being taxed all the time. And so when taxes become a standard, it's this mentality of a Robin Hood mentality. I mean, the poor decided that we're going to tax the rich. And so eventually the rich looked at the law that the poor made and said, okay, here's your law. All right, well, we're just going to do it this way. We're within the law. Well, now they're not getting taxed. Yeah, but we're following your rules, the rules that you wrote. And then so we end up taxing the people, the very people who voted for it end up getting taxed. So that was the first thing. Economics is really the long-term effects of policies, right? And so just like eggs are, the long-term effects are already in there, just like the hen is already in the egg. It just looks like an egg, but the long-term effects are already inside. So when a policy is written, the long-term effects are already in that policy. You just have to have the ability to see past it. There's this really cool parable that was told about the cobbler, the shoemaker, right? The cobbler and the glassmaker. So the cobbler has this shop, and a boy runs by and he takes a brick and he throws it through the window of the shop, right? Now the shop window is broken, and inadvertently this kid, this vandal, he created a job, right? He created a job for the glassmaker. So the glassmaker now can actually rejoice a little bit because he has some commerce. He has some ability to make some money. So he goes and he makes a new plane for the glassmaker, and you would ask the question, so if the glass being broke created a job, does that make the kid a hero? And I think all of us would say, well, of course not. That doesn't make the kid a hero. That makes the kid a vandal. And we have this idea that if we create jobs, we become the hero, right? Just because you're creating a job doesn't mean you're a hero. The kid broke the glass of the cobbler. It doesn't mean that he's a hero for creating a job for the glassmaker. We have to be able to look at it and see past the short term and see the long-term effects. What we don't see, the unseen thing that the book says, is the cobbler was going to buy a suit, right? He had some cash saved up to buy a really nice suit. He's not going to buy that suit now because he had to spend money on the glass. So who lost a job? The suit maker. The suit maker lost a job, but we don't ever see that. And so it's talking about economics and it's talking about job growth and all the above, but it's talking about the unseen effects on the economy when you mess with job creation. And that's basically the broken glass concept. This is a really good example. So we have laws on the books to protect poor people from not getting loans, right? And so they're government financed loans, right? So you go into the bank and your credit's not great, and we claimed some racial disparity, or I need a chance just like everybody else, right? So the government's going to come in and give you basically a bad loan. And so the government comes in and they give all these bad loans out, right? Because they're wanting to what? Do a short-term effect of help out people who are poor, impoverished. And they're basically breaking glass. They're breaking glass. They're creating a job. They're creating a short-term effect. And then we see the long-term effect of that. What was the long-term effect? 2008 was the long-term effect of that, right? So when you give bad loans to people who can't afford it, you don't get prosperity. You get bad loans that don't get paid back, and you get a market that crashes. And so I think if we can, it's high school math. If we can look past the short-term opportunities and see the long-term effects of some of these policies that we create, then we really start to see a holistic view of economics. Another good example of this is government work and unions. They look, and don't get me wrong, I'm for fair wages, I'm for companies paying their people enough to live, and all the above. But the idea that we are going to focus on work, labor, right? We're going to focus on the amount of work done and not productivity is not advantageous for growth at all. So you have unions that literally slow down production in order to have another person on, just to maximize labor. This kind of plays into our political discussions on minimum wage and what that should be. Minimum wage, the argument is $15 an hour. This is also, again, high school math. When you look at raising the minimum wage, you look at inflation. And so if your wages are raised and the market is raised, then you don't actually get buying power from that. You're getting a lot less spending power. If you have $10 and milk is $5, then you have $5 of spending power. If you get your minimum wage bumped to $15, right, and then milk jumps along with that at $11, at $16, high school math, at $16, now you have $4 of buying power. So when inflation gets raised, you don't necessarily gain spending power. You gain money, but you gain less spending power. That was pretty intriguing. This was a very intriguing quote from the book. If unemployment, right, pays $100 a week, and my weekly wage is $104 a week, am I not working for $4? So when we look at long-term unemployment and what you are basically providing for people, you're providing a incentive not to work. And that's not to say we shouldn't have unemployment, but that is to say that we should definitely revisit the idea or the purpose behind it. So if my wages are 104 and unemployment's 100, that's $4 worth of labor for someone who labors. It really devalues the worker. This is off topic. I was watching a video the other day, and it was talking about how nothing in life is free. There's this concept, well, this is true. Everything in the universe existed from the very beginning. Matter only transfers, energy only transfers, right? It can't be extinguished. Money is the exact same way. It only transfers. So if you're getting a check from the government, unemployment, that's not free money. It's coming from somewhere. It's coming from someone who's working. It's coming from someone who's struggling to pay their mortgage. It's coming from a different place. It doesn't magically appear, and if it does magically appear, then that is not actual money. That's inflation, and you're losing buying power. This was a really cool quote. Inflation is the opium of the people, right? As inflation goes up and we get more and more money, it's like this opium to us. We think that things are getting better when actuality we're getting less and less and less spending power, less and less buying power. We talked about the wage gap and how it keeps getting larger and larger as inflation keeps going up and up, and we raise the minimum wage, and all of this stuff kind of compounds on each other. It just gets wider and wider and wider and wider, and again, it's high school math. An increase in income due to inflation results in less purchasing power. We already talked about that. Economics, and so this was the book in a whole. Economics is the science of seeing secondary consequences. If you can't see secondary consequences, then you are not going to fully understand the economics that are around you. This goes for policies that we make. This goes for decisions that we make financially, as far as like getting credit, This was another great quote. Credit is not something that is given to you. It is something that is inherent. You either have credit or you don't have credit. A company can't give you credit. You either have a good history or a bad history. If you have a bad history, you're not going to get a loan. If you have a good history, you're going to get a loan. So it's not something that is a right. It's not something that is given. It's something that you either have or you don't have. That was basically it for economics in one lesson by Henry Hazlitt. Definitely check that out. The second book that I read this week was The Obstacle is the Way. This book is on Stoicism. Stoicism is the endurance of pain and hardship without display of feelings and without complaint. So this really like jumps into what I dealt with this week and losing everything. I'm reading this book on Stoicism and really looking at our obstacles and seeing that like we can't change our situation, so just react accordingly. If I lose everything and I complain about it, I lose time, which again is losing even more money than I've already lost. So I just finished reading this book on Stoicism, The Obstacle is a Way, and I get everything stolen, and I actually was pretty proud about the way that I reacted. A little upset, but the following day, yesterday, I pulled my bootstraps up and I changed all my accounts for my banking stuff. I got all that handled. I went out and I bought a new computer, which sucked. Someone even got onto my old computer and deleted my entire calendar on Google. So my online calendar was deleted and all my events coming up. I was able to not freak out and restore all of that. And I think it was really because I was looking at it from this perspective of how we react. One of my guys, man, Thomas Edison, he's the vision without execution is hallucination. I love that quote. Thomas Edison, his factory burnt down. It was millions of dollars, right? Burned down, and back then millions of dollars might equal billions. Talking about inflation, right? So his factory is burning down, and he has all these inventions and new ideas that he's working on, and this is when he had a corporation, so he has employees that have been working on new inventions, and it's burning down, and he grabs one of his kids and he says, hey, go wake up your mother and tell her to get all her friends. They're never going to see a fire like this again in their life. And so instead of freaking out and complaining and crying, right, his first reaction was, hey, go get your mom. She's going to think this fire is amazing, right? So when we look at things objectively, when we don't waste time on our own pity party, we're able to assess problems and see the glass half full. We get to see the silver linings. One of the silver linings for me on all my stuff getting stolen was it showed me my holes, right? It showed me the holes in my operation that I need to fill and fix. And if I don't, when I'm further down the road in this endeavor that I'm on, it could really ruin me. Yeah, I lost some stuff that I'll never replace. I lost all my pictures from college, pictures from photo shoots that never got used by companies, but I still had the prints, all digital, and songs that I'd been working on for 10 years and all the above. But I think about all being lost, and then you think it's all just vanity, right? Like when Thomas Edison was around, right? He didn't have a backup hard drive. He didn't have even quality pictures, right, to show his future generations or whatever, keepsakes like that. He didn't have any of that. And he's watching his building burn down, and his first thought is go get your mother. So when watching my own little tiny building, which is just a backpack, when I see it disappear, it kind of gives you a perspective of, all right, I guess it's all just vanity. It's not that important. This was a great quote. How skilled we are at cataloging what holds us back. We're really good at finding all the things that can stop us from being successful. Humanity is great at that. I'm great at that. Finding all the problems, like, oh, if I just had this, oh, if I wasn't dyslexic, oh, if I was just taller, I'd be doing this, or if I was just this, I'd be doing this, you know? If I had more money, if my family would have been more well off, if they would have had 118s when I wrestled in college, it would have been so much different. Like all this nonsense, right? that we are so good at pointing out what could have been instead of looking at the attributes that we have. This was a great quote. Bad companies are destroyed by crisis. Good companies survive them, and great companies are improved by them. That was Andy Grove. He was the CEO of IBM. And that leads into the story of The King and the Boulder. The King and the Boulder is a story that the king put a huge boulder in front of the entranceway of the kingdom, the castle, right? And he put it there, and he goes and he hides in the bushes, and he wants to see how people react to adversity. And so the shopkeeper walks up, he sees the boulder, and he realizes he can't move it. He turns around and goes home. The herder, who has all his sheep behind him, he shows up and he sees he can't move it. He can't get in to sell his sheep, so he says, all right, the day's lost. I'm going to go home. And countless people after people show up, and the spear maker and the wheel guy, and everybody shows up and they see it, and there's no hope. The boulder's way too big to move by themselves. They can't do it. Later on in the day, a homeless man walks up and he sees the boulder, and he looks at the boulder, and he runs into the woods, spends a couple hours in there, and finds a log big enough to make a lever. Grabs another rock, puts it down, uses the lever, and moves the boulder to get in. Underneath the boulder is a gold purse filled to the brim that the king had put there. And the moral of the story is that underneath every obstacle, there is an opportunity to improve our position. So although we do face obstacles, there are opportunities within those obstacles to actually not only make it through the obstacle, but to improve our very position that we had when we started. I truly believe that after this weekend and everything, all my stuff being stolen, I think I'm going to come out on the other end of that in a better position than if it wouldn't have happened. The amount of productivity I had yesterday and the amount of drive that I have now is times 10. If it wasn't already amped up before this happened, it's really amped up now. There's the idea from The Alchemist. I always go back to that book. When things get really, really hard, it just means that we're getting close. And so when things like that happen, it's like, yeah, I'm right there. I know I'm close because the universe is starting to push back. Things that hurt instruct. Benjamin Franklin, another one of my guys. I love his quotes. This is from Proverbs 24:10. If you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. And it all comes back to us deciding the things that will actually harm us. Like, we have the power to decide what harms us and what doesn't harm us. And it's all in perspective and how we look at that. So again, this is a book on stoicism and reacting to problems. When action is the priority, vanity falls away. When you get hit with adversity, like I experienced, action becomes the priority, because there is no time. There's literally, I have no time this week to complain. I have no time this week to woe is me. My suitcase got stolen too. I got to go shopping for some clothes. I basically keep all my clothes in my suitcase in my car, and those got taken. But that's all vanity stuff, right? Like, now my only purpose, my only priority is action, because I have to work twice as hard to get everything back in order. You will have this is an amazing quote. You will have far better luck toughening yourself up than trying to remove the teeth from this world. And in order to command our environment, we must first obey our environment. So when our environment teaches us a valuable lesson, like, don't keep your backpack in plain sight in a car, right? I know that already. I usually put it in the trunk. The trunk had musical equipment in there. Okay, so how do I fix that? Well, I need to get a van. You guys have been watching. You know I've been talking about that for months. Why haven't I done it yet? Why haven't I pulled the trigger? Have a hard drive at home. Like, these are things that I must obey first before I can command my environment. If I want to create my own life and create my own things and desires, I first have to obey my environment. And I wasn't doing that, and I paid a really high price for that. So we have this is one of the greatest quotes from the book, and I'll end it here. We all have cancer, and the result is death. Regardless of when and where, we will all cross that bridge. So when it comes to vanity, right, and when it comes to things, and when it comes to bad things that happen to us, if you take perspective and you take a step back, you realize that there's nothing new that can happen to you that hasn't happened to other people in this existence. It's all vanity, and we're all going through the exact same thing, and we all have the same disease. It's life. We're going to die. There's only one guarantee. You're born, you're going to die. I'm going to go through it, you're going to go through it, everybody's going to go through it. And trying to wrap our heads around anything more than that is vanity. So when we look at adversity, one of the things that I'm trying to do right now is to look at it objectively. We're always great at giving other people advice. We see someone going through a divorce and we're like, well, you should do this. That'll take care of it. Because we're looking at it objectively. We see someone like me lose and get all their stuff stolen. Well, Sam, you should have just done this. Objectively, right? When our emotions get involved, we screw all that up. So if you guys haven't heard of Stoicism yet, check that out. The next book that I'm reading is by Marcus Aurelius, called Meditations. And he is he's not the author of Stoicism. He talks a lot about Stoicism, but he quotes other people. I can't see because there's a glare on the screen, but I see a thumbs up from, looks like Kyle. Thanks, Kyle. I appreciate you watching. So next book, Stoicism. On Stoicism, it's called Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. I'm going to check that out next week, which is technically this week. I'm at summer camp. I'll tell you guys all about summer camp. Next week I have a shoot on Thursday for my buddy Bryden and his insurance business, and then we have some other stuff coming up on Friday and Saturday. I got to look at a calendar to see what that is exactly. But all good stuff, guys. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. If you get a chance, check me out on Instagram. And you can always follow my Twitter feed for my notes during my reading throughout the week. That's all I put on Twitter, are my notes. And I'll talk to you guys soon.